Hello everyone, my name is Runhao. I'm a PhD student at the MRC CBU here, and today I'd like to talk about aperiodic neural activity and its links to domain general cognition. So frequency domain analysis is one of the commonest analyses for MEG, EEG, and the local field potential data. For cognitive scientists, we often look at power differences in different frequency bands like theta, alpha, and beta in different cognitive conditions. For example, we may find a alpha decrease in easy condition compared to hard condition, and we may probably interpret it as like alpha plays an important role in demand coding. But this could be a little bit problematic. So when you find a alpha decrease, you may find a narrow band oscillatory alpha decrease like this. But it also could be a broadband shift over the whole power spectrum. So you will still find alpha decrease, but it's not the whole fact. And also you may find the alpha decrease here, but the truth is that the frequency peak just had a shift. For example, in one condition, the peak alpha frequency is 10 Hertz, and other condition, the frequency of alpha is 8 Hertz. So you may still find a alpha decrease here, but it's not the case. And you may also find a rotation of the whole power spectrum. And in that case, you may also find alpha decrease or increase in the narrow band, but actually it's aperiodic exponent change. So typically when you find a alpha decrease or increase, it could be result from the oscillatory activity change like here, or it could be a aperiodic activity change. So it makes it very important to separate aperiodic and oscillatory activity and perhaps to look at their separate differences in different cognitive conditions. And recently, the aperiodic neural activity is actually a new research hotspot. And as you can see here, from 2020, literatures about aperiodic activity or 1RF or scale-free activity just has a dramatic increase. And that's probably because some newly developed, easy-to-use toolboxes exist, like FOOF or Erasure. So people just started to look at 1RF or aperiodic activity. And we also have some new development of the theories to interpret the mechanism underlying the 1RF or aperiodic activity. So the most influential one now is the EI ratio or EI balance hypothesis. But actually, there are also other hypotheses, and some researchers may think the EI balance one may be a little bit like oversimplified. So it is still an area need further development. So things that it is very important to estimate aperiodic activity out of the oscillations. So next I will talk something about how to estimate aperiodic activity. In theory, this aperiodic power spectrum follows a power law distribution, just 1RF, and it appears as a straight line on a log-log scale. So as you can see here, the straight line demonstrates a 1RF or aperiodic activity, and you also have some oscillatory peaks, stands for oscillations. So the simplest estimation method is to use a linear regression to get the intercept and the slope on a log-log scale to describe aperiodic activity. And it should be noted that some researchers tend to use offset, but it's just the equivalent to intercept here. And some people use the exponent of the 1RF function, and the exponent is actually just equivalent to minus slope. So this is first like the very simple method to use, and now we also have some advanced method. So one of the most influential one is called FOOF, fitting oscillations and 1RF. So it is a parametric method that parameterizes power spectrum as a combination of both aperiodic components and several oscillatory peaks. So this is their formula. So you can see that the whole power spectrum is a combination of the aperiodic component and several oscillatory peaks, which they fitted with Gaussians. So basically, they just use an initial fit of the straight line for the 1RF and then take it out, and then just iteratively to get Gaussians to stand for oscillations. You can set the threshold for that. So finally, after FOOF, you can get a lot of parameters about oscillations and aperiodic activities. So for each oscillatory peak, you will have the central frequency, the bandwidth, and the power. And for aperiodic component, you will have the offset, have the exponent, and if you want, you can also get the power underlying the 1RF curve. So apart from parametric method, you can also have some non-parametric mathematical method. For example, ERASA is one of them. So the full name of ERASA is irregular resampling autospectral analysis. And in theory, it can analytically extract exactly the aperiodic spectrum, taking advantage of the fractal or scale-free nature of the 1RF background. So if you look at the power spectrum on a log-log scale, you may find oscillatory peaks and 1/f as a straight line. So if you keep upsampling and downsampling the data, the peak, oscillatory peak, will move around, but the 1/f curve will stay the same, will still be a straight line. So if you take some strategically, taking some resampling factors, and then take a geometric average, and then take a median, you can exactly get the perfect 1/f aperiodic activity here. But although like in practice, you may not get a perfect 1/f anyway because of the existence of noise, but ERASA is still very good to use because you don't need to define any like threshold or parameters. So you may ask if we have both parametric and non-parametric methods, whether these two methods can give us quite different results or whether they are quite similar. So generally, I think both methods will give us very similar and robust performance, although FOOF tends to show a little bit higher exponent than ERASA. So this is one recent study compared FOOF and ERASA on the estimation of aperiodic exponent. So as you can see here of the distribution, and they are quite similar, although FOOF has a little bit like a systematic higher exponent than ERASA. But as you can see, they share very high positive correlations. And even in different cognitive conditions, the differences are quite similar. So it tend to be a systematic difference rather than could be modulated by cognition or something else. So in short, I think both methods are good to use. And next, I will talk about our recent work about the role of aperiodic and oscillatory activity in domain general cognition. So when we talk about domain general cognition, we are interested in a specific neural network. We call it as the multiple demand system. So you can find actually MD system activation in almost all the tasks if you just compare hard versus easy. And for example, in working memory, in mathematical problems, in switching, and many, many more. And it's just very robust, and you can replicate it in many, many studies. So the MD system span across frontal and parietal cortices. But yeah, most of these studies are based on fMRI. Actually, we don't quite know whether there is any oscillatory or aperiodic signals like underlying the MD system. So we want to find the link between the fMRI literature to EEG MEG. So here we did a MEG-EEG study using a large task set. So we have three different cognitive control tasks: working memory, task switching, and multi-source interference task. For each task, we have hard versus easy conditions. We also have alphanumeric versus color conditions. And what we want to do is to see whether there is any oscillatory or aperiodic response can code task demand across many, many of these tasks. And we will use multivariate decoding analysis on 6 different kind of signals. So we first use ERASA to separate oscillatory and aperiodic components. For oscillations, we have theta alpha and beta power. For aperiodic, we have broadband power averaged across 3 to 30 Hz. We also have slope and intercept. So just a brief demonstration about how we do MVPA on these like frequency domain data. So for example, if we are interested in alpha frequency, we can take the alpha power for each channel in the MEG-EEG sensor space for either easy or hard condition in one subtask. And then we just do a classification analysis. Here we use linear SVM with 5-fold cross validation. And in this case, we can get a decoding performance. Here we use the area under the curve. And if we find a significant above chance accuracy, That just tells us that the alpha power contains information about hard versus easy in this subtask. And we can use this logic to all of these different kind of signals and in different tasks. Then let's look at the results about the coding of task demand by aperiodic activity. So as you can see here, all three kinds of aperiodic signals can decode hard versus easy actually across many of these tasks. Although for task switching, the decoding performance is a little bit lower, but still above chance. And for working memory and multi-source interference tasks, the broadband power share shows the highest decoding performance. The next question is that if there is all really like the main general signal, we think the classifier to classify one task's hard versus easy condition should be generalized to other tasks, right? So next we will just do some cross-task generalization. For example, for broadband power, we train a classifier in one task and then we test it in any other tasks, and we can get the accuracy here. So as we showed here, for broadband power, the patterns to classify hard versus easy is really cross-generalizable across tasks. So there is only one cell not above the significant level, but all of the other cells just reach the significant level. And for slope and intercepts, actually they can be generalized across some of the tasks, but not all the tasks. So we think that broadband power might be the best candidate on the lines MD network or MD activation. And we also look at the source localizations, and it seems for aperiodic activity, the source patterns are quite broadly distributed, which is similar to the MD patterns. And how about oscillatory activity? Actually, we found that all three kinds of frequency power, theta, alpha, and beta, they can still decode hard versus easy, although they had a bit of like a lower decoding performance than aperiodic signals. And when we look at cross-task generalization, we find that they can still be generalized across some of the tasks, but not all the tasks. And their source localization showed the quite typical oscillatory sources like mid-frontal theta, posterior alpha, and frontal beta. So we found that both aperiodic and oscillatory activity coded task demand across many tasks. Although aperiodic broadband power might be the best candidate on the lines AMD network, given its high cross-task generalization and distributed source patterns. As MEG still has a little bit like a low spectral resolution, so next we would like to link the broadband power to MD network more directly. So we did a follow-up fMRI study using the same task sets using another like sample. So in this case, we first look at the hard versus easy contrast unilaterally, and we can find a very typical MD activations across frontal and parietal lobe. And if we compare our results to previous defined MD patches by Mortas et al., and we can find they are really replicatable and share very similar patterns here. So next, we just use a fusion analysis based on the representational dissimilarity analysis. So for fMRI data, we have the MD ROIs, and we also have a V1 as a comparison. So for each of conditions, we have 12 conditions. We have 3 tasks, 2 demand, and 2 content. So we can build an RDM, like condition by condition. And similarly, we can create RDMs for each MEG signals across all MEG sensors. Like for oscillatory, we have theta, alpha, and beta. For aperiodic, we have broadband power, slope, and intercept. We also have 3 model RDMs to capture task demand, task content, and task-specific differences between different tasks captured by behavioral accuracy. And then we just combine all 3 RDMs to do the commonality analysis to see how different fMRI regions share information with MEG that could be uniquely explained by models. So let's look at the results. For MD regions, we found the broadband power here shared the highest commonality with task demand, and which is consistent with our MEG results actually. But for V1, we found both alpha power and broadband power share the highest commonality with the demand coding with V1. But for content, we found all six MEG signals share contribute to the content decoding in MD regions. But for V1, we found alpha oscillations shares the highest commonality with V1 to code cost content. So in general, we found aperiodic activity, especially the broadband power, may underline the MD network that support domain general cognition, which is consistent to our MEG results. But sensory regions like V1 may be more associated with oscillatory power like alpha, suggesting their role in sensory gating and task-specific modulations. The take-home message: aperiodic neuroactivity is functionally meaningful, and it is important to separate aperiodic and oscillatory activity when examining their roles in cognition. And sometimes it might be important to revisit some classic results in oscillations. And now we have both parametric and non-parametric methods to use to separate them quite easily. And from our own results, we found aperiodic broadband power may serve as a mesoscale level electrophysiological basis for domain general cognition, potentially associated with the domain general MD network. So thank you for my supervisors, collaborators, and thank you for your attention.